Hey, everybody, we're going to give it another, 5 minutes or so for some last minute folks to walk in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Hello. Perfect. year ago from Amelia. Affordable housing in Ocala, but the great benefit about this is really educating my team. We have over 800 team member about the hometown heroes because Ocala is growing, and so we have some team members that are really trying to learn more about the hometown heroes, how we should be able to keep all our team members to work with this. And I started a nonprofit after losing my daughter. Hey, David, before you get started. Yes. Thanks. Yes, we're getting feedback from folks on the line that say that they can't hear the audio. So make sure you use your microphone and speak loud. Thanks. Yeah, there's a little person that has some voice waves coming off, and when the red light comes on the microphone, you know it's on. There you go.
Who knows? My name is David Hall. I'm originally from New Jersey. Bruce Springsteen. No, I always wanted to say that, but anyhow. I went to FIT, Florida Institute of Technology. I went to school to be an environmentalist, believe that or not. So I got a job working at a department store, and I seen a lady that kept coming in and out of the store buying products for a house. And she said, "You're probably wondering why I keep coming in every day buying Christmas stuff." I'm like, in my mind, not really, but okay, I'll entertain you. Yeah, why? And she says she has like a 5-bedroom place that she decorates each of the room for her kids, and she had a house here and a house in Maine. So at that time, I was a college student. I said, if she can do it, I can do it. So I went and bought my house, and went and bought a house. I found that it was so easy to purchase a house, so I became a realtor to make sure that I didn't got cheated when I purchased a home, and I found out that I did, and I found out how easy it was. So I decided that I wanted to be able to educate people on how easy it is to purchase a home, because a lot of people that I knew been renting for like 20 and 30 years, especially my grandson's grandmother, she's been renting for such a long time. I said she could have owned her house, so I got my real estate license, and I got into that. So I received a call about a couple of years ago about an opening that's on the board here. And then in December of that same year, I received a call from the governor's office that the governor had appointed me to be on the board, and I'm so excited to be on the board. I learned a lot. I enjoy going around the state, seeing how state funds is helping to build affordable and attainable homes for people who really couldn't afford it. And I think the one thing that was the highlight was when we went and visited a facility for homeless people in Orlando, and the one lady who said that she slept underneath the I-94 underpass and how it changed her life. And it made me feel so good to be part of this board and seeing what it is that the Florida Housing Finance Corporation is doing, and also what the tax dollars are doing to help Floridians in the state of Florida. Thank you.
Sure. Dev Matwani, President Merrimack Ventures. From Fort Lauderdale. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale. Our company is a development company that builds hotels, apartments, and condos, but all we do is market rate, nothing subsidized, so no direct involvement in the programs that we administer, but I certainly appreciate the importance of them. Family started out, we bought a little motel in Fort Lauderdale, on Fort Lauderdale Beach, which was a very seasonal market at the time with spring breakers for about 6 weeks. But the rest of the year, many of our rooms were rented out to families who had housing insecurity and challenges finding housing that they could afford, and dealt with and we lived in the motel. So we not only did we meet and these families as our neighbors, but also our employees. And so have seen firsthand growing up and continue to see the challenges that that are faced out there. So while we directly provide market rate housing, wanted to do our part in terms of administering these programs and helping to try to solve the crisis at all levels. And so that's why I'm here, and I'm happy to serve and be with all of you today.
Hi, I'm Jody Hudgens. If I may, Mr. Chair, if you didn't see the article in Florida Trend in the last 10 days of Dev and his remarkable mom, I had tears. I was just so proud of the story, the impact, and how your mom, after your father's untimely, it was just incredible. And I was incredibly pleased to say, gosh, this is Dev. Well, so. Well, no, but you're part of it. You got good stock, and so if you haven't seen it in Florida Trend, I think you can Google Motwani, and you'll get to read the article. It's an incredible story and just very inspiring. So it inspires us all to do good. Jody Hudgens, I'll go maybe current. I currently teach at the Graduate School of Banking at LSU. I've been a banker for 45 years. We sold our bank last year, and that enabled me an opportunity to retire, and have been in Sarasota for 35 years and have been chair of the Sarasota County Planning Commission and chair of the Housing Authority of Sarasota. So have some real unique experiences and understand some of this stuff that just a little bit, as Larry and I were remarking earlier, just a little bit of this background, and just finished serving on the Board of Governors of the Florida Bar, and that was an eye-opening experience. And so this, I was appointed by Senator Pasadomo for the Live Local Act. I don't know how long that appointment is. That's still up in the air. Oh. We need to talk. I'm just, let me take this moment. I'm just not flabbergasted, but just amazed at the level of quality of staff that we have and the depth of knowledge and the character. And I just, it's incredible that the depth and the knowledge. So thank you.
And I'll echo that article in Florida Trend about Dev's family was inspiring. I actually texted it to a couple of friends. Really awesome. It's a pleasure to serve. So, Mr. Former Speaker, Larry.
Former. That former, he just said former means old, and that's correct. Larry Creedle, I'm from Ocala, and I've been a Florida resident since 1971 in the Ocala area. My parents moved here in 1966. Jody and I were just talking about the explosive growth that this state of Florida has been experienced in the last several years, and particularly in the Ocala area. My colleague down there is from Ocala as well. I have never seen the amount of activity in the apartment development as we've been seeing in the last couple of years in Ocala. My work experience, I was a former home builder, independent sole proprietor, and what got me involved in interest in government was some governmental regulation, and particularly the issue of workers' comp. That's what brought me off of the sideline and saying, I'm not sure who sets these rates, but they seem to be a little bit tilted, not necessarily in favor of the independent sole proprietor. With that said, I served 8 years on the Marion County Commission, where I served chairman twice. When I took my seat on the commission, we were just involved in implementing our comprehensive land use program. And that was quite an experience. So for 8 years, we dealt with the comp plan. We dealt with comp plan amendments. We dealt with regulation. We dealt with everything involved regarding the development of the community. In 2000 and 2001, I ran for the Florida House, still trying to find out who deals with workers' comp. I was elected to the Florida House, where I served 8 years. My last 2 years, as was mentioned, I became Speaker of the House. That was 9 and 10, during the worst economic times in the history of the state of Florida. We had no money. Yes, we did sweep the Sadowski Act Trust Fund. We needed the money in order to survive. So I've had experience in areas where maybe I can contribute a little bit. I am very interested, though, in the area of development and encouraging single-family residential development home ownership. It builds wealth in the community. I have a son who lives in Jacksonville, and he is renting a small apartment. He's paying $1,800 a month for this small apartment in Jacksonville. And I think this is something that is pretty much common throughout the whole state of Florida. We've heard it just recently been touched upon in some of the presidential races, home ownership, building wealth in the community. I'm hoping someday he can afford to buy a house in Jacksonville Beach if that's where he decides to live. But right now, it's a tough, tough deal for people who are working, doing what they need to do in order to be able to buy a house, to build wealth, to have something at the end of their working career. But anyway, I am, I guess, entering my second year here, and I'm still trying to grab and grasp this what would we call it? Organization, okay? It is big, it is huge, it is complex, and as Jody said, my impression is we've got a great staff here, and they have tried to help this old guy understand a little better all of the complications of what goes on within the housing community. One thing I would suggest that as we move forward, I served 8 years, as I said, in the legislature. I'm not sure if the legislature and the legislative body really knows about the Florida Housing Trust Fund. Maybe we can, at some point in time, begin to kind of provide some information to the key legislators, the key decision makers, just how important this organization is to the state of Florida, and particularly to the residents of the state of Florida. I'm looking forward to excuse me. I am on Medicare, so I get these calls every day. I've tried blocking it. The next thing I'm going to do is throw this in the pond, okay? I thought I had the ringer off, but anyway. With that, I'll pass it on to Mr. Chairman. So.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. Mario.
Good morning, everybody. Mario Ficella. I guess the most recent change, everybody knows that I recently left TD Bank, and I'm now with Bank United. So I'm done with my first week there, and look forward to doing some good things on the lending side for affordable housing. Bank United has gotten an interest in doing more, and so I'm there to try to help them to do that, as well as other things. So I got involved with Florida Housing under the Scott administration. The opportunity came before me, and I had a conversation with Governor Scott. We did have some things in common, like I was a homeless school child, at times in my life, and he grew up in the projects, so we related a bit on that. So, my purpose is to really try to contribute and help towards filling the gaps of affordable housing in this state. And, I proudly served as chair, and enjoyed that exciting ride. And, And, but honestly, we did some good things there too. And you know, this corporation does just such fantastic things. And, I can't be more grateful for the staff of this corporation and all the hard work that they do to just really, keep the wheels turning on this organization and keeping us informed and answering all our questions. And so I really, do appreciate everything that you all do. I'm originally from Virginia. I've been in Florida for 31 years now. So I am a Floridian. I have 2 kids, one at UCF and one just became a senior down in Wellington High School. And yeah, it's great to be here, and I'm proud to serve.
Thank you, Mario. Ron?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I may be one of the only ones here that was actually standing at the Capitol steps in 1992 when we pushed Sadowski. Okay, and I was there with the Florida Home Builders. And so I've been involved with affordable housing for a long time. I am actually got my general contractor's license. I think I was the youngest in the state at the time. In 1972, I was 10 years old. What? That doesn't work? No. Anyways. Anyways, nope. Larry, I get those calls too.
I got a good arm, Larry.
Anyways, I'm actually a third-generation home builder. We built thousands of homes in Central Florida, and including condominiums, apartments, and actually we did in 1992 as well. We did a tax credit deal. At the time, the developers understand, at the time, in our application, we only scored like 80% and still got funded. That won't work. It hasn't worked for many years. But anyway, so I have that experience as a contractor, and I served actually, this is my 7th year on the board. I've served as the vice chair for 2 years and chairman for 3 years, and got out of being the chairmanship in the right time. Thank goodness. Anyways, I've been involved. I was very involved in lobbying the legislature when they were actually looking at getting rid of Sadowski. That was after 11, 12, in that period of time. And I served as president of the Florida Home Builders in 2013 and 14. And our chairman, Ryan, is going to be the new president of Florida Home Builders coming in October. Anyways, been very involved in affordable housing. And like Larry, I've been trying to get us doing more projects for single family. I've been working with David very closely and trying to do what we can. And actually, I think we have the first project that David and I worked on 3 years ago, 4 years ago. 3 years ago, actually being funded. If it's not, it's going to be within the next few days. That provides up to $1 million in construction financing for a nonprofit to build affordable housing, knowing that when I was building affordable housing, and I was the contractor for a large nonprofit, and I was their builder. We built hundreds of homes under a lot of different programs. So I knew that there was difficulty in getting construction funds. Other than Habitat for Humanity, nonprofit, it's almost impossible because you really don't have a buyer that comes in to do a permanent loan. So you have to get the money on your own. So this was kind of a demonstration program to try to help fund some nonprofits on lots they got from the county to do affordable housing. And hopefully this will roll over and turn over to be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe more houses every year from them. So hopefully that works out. And I appreciate my time here, and that's it.
Thank you, Ron. I will take one more minute to expand on my story then, since everyone else took a moment on there. So 10 years ago, I had been working for the company that I now own for the previous 10 years during the downturn. And I just acquired the company, and I was doing a project for a very, very famous television judge. And I was working for her, and there was construction conflict where the code didn't make sense for anything in practical reality, and the short was, I was told by the building department if I wanted to do something about it, I'd have to change the law. So I didn't know anything about that, but I was a member of my local home builders association, so I reached out to the state association to find out how to change the law. And as dumb as that sounds, I didn't know what I was doing, but I got the law changed. It happened that we were in session, I got it changed, and I realized the power of politics and the legislature. So I started getting more involved. I got involved with the Florida Home Builders Association then, and first I heard about Sadowski. Didn't know anything about affordable housing at all, and realized what a difference a properly structured organization could make if it was funded properly, which came down to politics. So I, at that point, had got involved with a number of political campaigns, and one of them was then Congressman DeSantis' campaign for governor, while I was working with the Florida Home Builders, and I was working on both of those in conjunction. So when I started to become more informed on Sadowski and how it wasn't being properly funded and it was being swept every year, I want to understand more about the legislation behind the corporation and how I could make a difference that way, which is why when he came into office and I had grown more familiar with what the corporation could do if it was properly funded, decided that this was the best path to make a real difference. So that's the slightly longer version of why I'm here. So, and yes, I am incoming president of the Florida Home Builders Association now, and it's an honor to serve with both organizations. So that's me. Thank you, everyone, for those intros. Learned a lot about everyone. It was good. Let's go right into it then, because as Ron referenced, the 3 years ago, working with David on that, I believe that came out of a workshop that we had back at the Hyatt was when we were working on that and the concept came up. So hopefully more great ideas like that come out of today in this forum, and that's the intent of today, is we don't get a long form, less formal, I shouldn't say informal, less formal setting to be able to talk about things, discuss concepts and ideas outside the board meetings. So normally, from the several workshops and retreats that I've been at, they're some of the most productive, meaningful drivers of legislation and also what we want to do as a corporation. So with that, let's start with the home ownership programs discussion. David's going to be leading that, I believe, and let's go right into it. David.
Before we start into that,
Please.
First of all, I just want to thank you all for coming and for all of your stories and for your willingness to serve. We really appreciate that and all the support you've given the staff. Also, Jenny wants to make a couple of quick announcements.
Just a few housekeeping things briefly, because I know David has a lot to cover. Wi-Fi password, for those of you who haven't asked me yet, all two of you, it's Wi-Fi lowercase 2024. Restrooms on both sides, left and right. So whichever way you go when you leave here, you'll find one. And I believe that was it. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Now that we've cut 20 minutes out, but I don't want to cut 20 minutes from you, so run as long as you need, please.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Appreciate it. David Westcott, Managing Director of Home Ownership Programs, and I really have two parts to my presentation today, as I have two sides of what I do. The Home Buyer Loan Programs is where I'm going to start with, and this includes the Hometown Heroes program. So Hometown Heroes, everyone is familiar with, and you know that we got $100 million again for the 2024-25 fiscal year. We were able to release those funds on July the 1st, and they were, all $100 million was fully reserved as of Tuesday afternoon. So, yes, again, yeah, so 51 days this time. Last year it took us 53 days, so we cut 2 days off the record. But that's how much in demand these funds are. Okay, let's see. There we go. So,
Just a question on that.
Yeah.
Where do you think an equilibrium would be in terms of, amount of dollars that would be necessary to, because that's a 51-day, to fill that bucket.
yes.
Where do you think the actual number might be in terms of demand?
I don't know that we've actually come up with a hard number, because part of what happens right now is you get a big influx of people that are grabbing at the allocation. So if we had a larger number, maybe we wouldn't have such an initial rush, and so it would spread out. We have gotten, in our conversations with the Governor's Office of Policy and Budget, and I'm stealing some of Katie's thunder, we are going to be asking for more next year. To see if we can get it to stretch out throughout the year a little bit longer. But I don't know that we know exactly, because, so much of it is just demand at the time.
Yes, and Angie's right. There's pent-up demand, so when it's first opened to reservations, there's a, huge number of people that come in, and then right at the end, as they know the money's running out, there's another huge influx there that of people reserving. Now, not all those reservations will make it, through, and so every week or two, once fallout occurs, we'll open the reservations back up to, to those folks that are waiting for the funds, and we'll keep doing that probably for the next month or so until, we get deals that are going all the way through, and I'll show more on this as we get
David,
started.
do you have any idea the dollar amount of all the properties or the new sale?
I certainly have the first mortgage amounts that are being leveraged, so I'll show you that on one of the
Great.
slides we have
Thank you.
coming up here. But generally, the home buyer loan programs, we work through participating lenders, so there's nobody on staff who has an MLS, NMLS number. We count on these public-private partnerships, and right now we have 262 participating lending institutions with numerous loan officers at each institution that have gone through the training and are available to make those reservations on behalf of their home buyers. So, we've talked a lot about down payment assistance and Hometown Heroes, but in addition to Hometown Heroes, there are 3 different other down payment assistance programs that we offer. HAP, there's 3%, 4%, and 5% assistance, where that's 3%, 4%, and 5% of the loan amount that's generated based on a higher first mortgage loan amount. And then there's an amortizing HLP second. For purposes of this, presentation, I'm just going to touch on the first 2, because that is, by far the lion's share of the down payment assistance that we provide every year. And anyone who gets our down payment assistance does need to credit qualify for one of the first mortgages that's listed, down there. Basically, the government loans, FHA, VA, account for roughly 60% of the loan production, and the conventional is about 40% of the loan production that we do. So let's talk about Hometown Heroes. It is actually in statute referred to as the Florida Hometown Hero Program. But for marketing purposes, Hometown Heroes sounds a lot better, Hometown Heroes Housing Program. So that's what we go with. And so by statute, you can see the AMI limits. Again, the down payment assistance is 5% of the first mortgage loan amount, with a cap at $35,000 and a floor minimum of $10,000 in DPA. The first year we had Hometown Heroes, it was limited to certain occupations. The last 2 years, that has not been the case. Now you just need to work full-time for a Florida-based company. Of course, the property has to be your primary residence. There's a first-time homebuyer requirement with an exception for veterans and active duty military members. The down payment assistance is a loan, not a grant. It's at 0% interest, non-amortizing, no payments. However, it is due on sale, refinance, or non-owner occupancy. And from the statute, it says this program is intended to be evergreen, meaning that at a certain point in time, the legislature hopes to stop appropriating new money and have us start working off of the repayments that we get as folks move up from their starter homes to the next house that they purchase. So some statistics for you. So now these are funds that were released last year. So these are the $100 million that the legislature appropriated and that we made available July 3rd of 2023. And then if you remember, with Angie's Sweeping the Corners exercise, we released another $36 million on November 6th. So for that $136 million, we were able to, but we were able to do over 8,800 loans, and then, Ron, that leveraged over $2.6 billion in first mortgage loans. So again, the purchase price will be more than that, but that's the sort of lending that we were able to help leverage. Again, the down payment assistance amount and the average first mortgage loan amount was a little over $300,000, which then at 5% makes the down payment assistance average at a little over $15,000. So you have this in your materials. I won't go through all of the demographics, but in case you are interested in what counties are in the top 10, what lending institutions are in the top 10, and then some demographics at the bottom. I included those and would be happy to answer any questions, about them, either now or probably, later. But that was the 2023 numbers. And then even though occupations, it's not limited to certain occupations, we still track occupations. So the top occupations for the 2023 amounts, you can see still include, registered nurse, which was one of the included occupations, veterans, and classroom teacher. And then, more broadly, it's healthcare, and then other management, sales, and business occupations, as you can see. So here's the new money that we just released. And this is the status that these loans are in. So, as you can tell, most of them are still in reservation or underwriting. But for the loans that have been purchased, pooled, and sold to our trustee, we do have some numbers on that. And these numbers are only through last Friday, so that's why it's at 90 million instead of the full 100 million. But Similarly, out of the 511 loans that, are purchased, and so we know that all of this information has gone through compliance. Again, the total first mortgage loan amounts, and that's the amount of the down payment assistance so far. But the average loan amount has gone up. It was 303 in 2023, and it's 319 now. So that means the amount of the first, or the down payment assistance at the 5% has gone up as well. And again, we'll keep updating these numbers as we get more loans purchased and through the compliance process. And these are the top occupations so far. So as you can see, they're still the same for the most part as what we were seeing in 2023.
Previous slide.
I sure can.
You were saying that the average mortgage amount is $319,000.
That's correct.
So based upon that, what is the purchase price of those homes? Is that an 80%, 20% ratio?
Yeah, no, most of the loans we do are at least a 95% loan to value.
Plus or minus
Some go up.
340.
Okay.
Plus or minus
So
340, 350.
you're looking at $340,000, $350,000 on a home purchase.
That's correct.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
$150,000 to $200,000 more on average in South Florida. It's absurd.
And if we're committing this in.
That's why a lot of people are in apartments.
Well, and you look at 51 days, I mean, the point that Mario brought up was,
Yeah.
if we, in this interest rate environment, if we're burning through $100 million in 51 days, imagine when rates go down. I mean, it's way less than what we need.
I'm not an expert in anything, but it seems to me that more incentives drives the price up. Would you agree? I mean, drives the price up of the sellers.
Yes, although, the 6,100 loans that we're able to do with the $100 million is just a drop in the bucket as to the, entire real estate market throughout Florida. So, yes, it does allow more borrowers to enter the market, but I don't think on those 6,100 loans that you're actually, actively driving up the price just because it is such a small number of sales that we're involved in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so we went through the occupations, and so we do have a couple of testimonials that I want to play for you so you can see exactly, who are some of the folks that we're helping. And thank you, to Katie and her whole group that helped put these together.
I'm a nurse, but I'm a stay-at-home mom right now.
Living within my community provides me a sense of belongingness. And then at the same time, I can provide help and assistance in terms of healthcare to one of my neighbors and to the community as well.
Having your own home when you're starting a family, it's a really great help because you get to have that space that you can raise your child, not worrying about the environment. Just over a year after arriving here in the U.S. as new immigrants, buying a home was something that we knew we could probably achieve in 5 to 10 years' time because that was not in the immediate plan. And then our friend and realtor told us about the Hometown Heroes program, and it sparked a hope in us of having a home we could call our own. And true enough, after 1 month, we did all that hassle-free because of the Hometown Heroes program.
Right, and both of those, the husband and the wife are both nurses. I think that the beginning got cut off for him.
Hi, my name is Rose, and I am a high school teacher here in Leon County. I learned about the Hometown Heroes program at my first open house. My son and I were going around looking at houses, and the first one we went to, the realtor, when they asked me what I did, and I said, teacher, said, oh, there's this new program. It's called Hometown Heroes, and it's perfect for you. And subsequently, every single open house, they all were super excited, and a few had different brochures and things with information on it. Right behind me is my favorite part of my home. That was one of the things I joked to all of my friends. I'm buying a house, not for me, but for my books. And so now I can spread out and I can really display them, and they can be my decor in my new home. This assistance changed our lives, mine and my son's. We're in a house now. I've been in an apartment my whole life, but I started to realize, like, in not that long, I'm gonna be retired. And my income's not gonna change at that point, but if rent keeps raising, I'm gonna have to rely on my kids to take care of me. I'm gonna have to get someone else to help. I'm not gonna be able to be independent at that point. And so I couldn't have done it without the Hometown Heroes assistance when I did. So it got me into the right house at the right time.
Great, and so we do have some other testimonials on our website too. I think you saw some of them last year, but.
My name is Chandria Poole, and dream of mine to give something to my boys so that, you know, they'll have something.
There we go. Okay, I guess. Here we go. So, so that's the update on Hometown Heroes. Our other prominent down payment assistance program is HAP, or the Florida Homeownership Assistance Program. But before I go into that, Mr. Chairman, was there any other questions on Hometown Heroes, or should I go into this? All right, great. So HAP has been our flagship DPA program for as long as I've been at Florida Housing. And yes. And so by statute, when I first got there, we could only serve people up to 80% of the area median income, but that was changed probably 10 or 12 years ago to be up to 120% of the area median income. The current down payment assistance amount is a flat $10,000 across the board. That has varied over the years. It's been as low as $7,500 and
$1,700.
Oh,
when I
okay. I'm
started.
sorry, $1,700 when she started. So
yeah, that was a while back.
But again, there is a first-time homebuyer requirement. Of course, it's got to be a primary residence, not investment property. The same 0% interest, non-amortizing, and no payments. Due on sale, refinance, or non-owner occupancy. And the program's been around long enough that it is mostly evergreen, meaning that we're able to put the funds back from repayments. So if it looks familiar, I think that, you know, this is pretty much where the legislature started when they were formulating Hometown Heroes, and then made a few tweaks to it to make it even more broadly sought after. So for our HAP statistics, again, I've kind of done the same thing. This is 2023 statistics. So you'll see that the numbers are smaller. We did 2,400 loans, and the average loan amount for this program is $226,000. But, you know, still very competitive credit scores from those that are participating. And instead of government loans, you know, being about 60%, you can see they're a little over 75% versus the conventional loans of about 22%. Again, there's our top counties, top lenders, and some other demographic information. And then if we go to 2024, we can see the average loan amount, you know, has gone up about $10,000 there. And again, it's 1,778 loans so far. And now that we're out of Hometown Heroes, you know, this is our the main availability of our DPA is through this program, so we expect to do hundreds of more loans between now and the end of the year through the HAP program.
David, is there anything disproportionate about the spread of where the home loans for both programs are going to the counties?
Yes, as
And is that a concern to you? Is that a concern to us?
Yes, we're not penetrating the most expensive South Florida markets using the HAP down payment assistance dollars. So Hometown Heroes really, you know, got us into those South Florida markets. And part of it is because it's a larger down payment assistance amount and it serves up to 150% AMI. Another part is, though, we've just been able to, since the Hometown Heroes program came on board, add mortgage brokers into the mix. And our top loan producer, UWM, you know, works only with mortgage brokers, and they are doing the lion's share of the business in South Florida, because a lot of folks in South Florida, when you want a mortgage loan, you don't go into a bank. You've got a friend who's a mortgage broker. And so we're trying to encourage UWM to not just do Hometown Heroes, but to do our bond program, where many of the HAP loans are originated. And so we think we've got them about 90% there. And once we get them there, we're hoping to see many more loans in those 3 South Florida counties.
Mr. Chair. Jody, I'm so glad you asked that. It was actually, I used to joke with David Westcott all the time that it was the same counties that were participating in HAP over and over, and I said, you know, what about the most expensive counties, the counties that need it the most? And so that's one of many reasons why Hometown Heroes was so exciting, was because it provided an opportunity for some of the more urbanized areas, especially in South Florida, to participate in some of the home ownership programs or in Hometown Heroes, because there was that added flexibility. So it wasn't just that the dollar amount was higher in terms of the down payment assistance, but also that the parameters around Hometown Heroes made it easier for folks across the state to be able to participate.
Mr. Chair. Please. David, can the home buyers take advantage of both programs, or is it one or the other?
It's one or the other, yes. Although, if there's any local down payment assistance available, that can be stacked, so there can be a second and a third mortgage loan.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
No, there you go.
Okay. I don't know when you arrived at Florida Housing, but I used this program quite a bit years ago, and I was selling the houses in the 50s. I don't know if that's before your time or not. But anyways, the requirement was the people had to come up with $500. That was it. So both down payment and closing costs, okay, were able to be funded. And so we sold a lot of houses using this, and I'm sure those houses are worth a whole heck of a lot now.
Yes.
If I may, just since it's a workshop, we don't need to do recognition by the chair to speak. Just feel free to openly discuss.
Great. Thank you. So,
I'll figure it out one of these days. On the HAP program, is there still funding that's still available to can be able to use, or did we use all those funds?
no, there's still funding available. It's, you know, that's one of our pitches to our lenders is you don't have to worry about us running out of funds. We are going to have down payment assistance funds available. And so the repayments from HAP, you know, allow us to keep it openly available throughout the year.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
David, quick question. So just the difference there, looking at so the hometown heroes, I guess your like top three is Broward, Miami-Dade, and Hillsborough. Yeah, which is great, right? And then, but the HAP, your top three is Duval, Polk, and Marion. So what's causing that difference? Is it because not much people are knowledgeable of the hometown heroes? Are we marketing it to that other area?
So, since HAP only goes up to 120% area median income, that cuts out, a certain amount of folks. And with the higher prices in South Florida, it means that fewer can qualify down there. Then there's also most of the mortgage brokers that we deal with are not signed up for our bond program yet. They only do Hometown Heroes through the TBA side. So, that penetration with the brokers is not there in South Florida for the HAP down payment assistance that it is for the Hometown Heroes.
How much money is available for HAP? And we're only using 23 million. How much is it? Or more than that, sorry.
We get a weekly update, and I think the last I saw was around 80.
A little bit under 80.
Okay.
Yeah.
$80 million. Yes, and as you can imagine, repayments are not, coming in fast and furious right now. But once, the refinance market picks up again, we'll start getting those repayments to be able to put back into the program.
Right, I think the last projection we did, there's 4 or 5 years worth, depending on what happens in the markets. And then at some point, every once in a while, we come back to the board when we're doing that doc stamp split and say, hey, we need a little bit more for HAP. But right now, it's evergreen as we speak right now.
Cool.
It's good.
It's great.
Do you see a change in I've noticed in the Hometown Hero, like in HAP, Polk is one of the top 4. And also I just see the new update, Polk is in the top 3, I guess, for the Hometown Hero. So is that going to change as far as the statistics, as far as, going from the HAP to the Hometown Hero with the Polk?
I can take a better look at the trends and let you know, but I can tell that, certain of the fast-growing counties, Marion, Polk, seem to really be picking up the participation in these programs. So, no, but I'd be happy to get with you later and
Thank you.
show you projections. So the last slide I have under the homebuyer loan programs, this comes out of the information item that you guys see in your board book, every board meeting. And so now that I've showed you what's Hometown Heroes and what's HAP, you can, tell that these average first mortgage loan amounts are a blend of both of them. So, but we have this in the back of your book for each board meeting. So you can kind of eyeball and see how we've done in 2023 and then 2024 year to date. And then 2024 is broken down further between conventional and government loan programs. So hope you find that information useful. And that's going to do it. No, thank you, Rose. For the homebuyer loan programs. Then, as Ron was talking about, we also have the homeownership new construction pilot program and a couple other things to talk about on that side. With me I've got Nicole Gibson. She's the director of our federal loan program. So that includes the National Housing Trust Fund, the Home Investment Partnerships Program, the CDBG-DR funds that we use on the multifamily side, but also the homeownership pool program. That's pools of funds, not swimming pools, but the HOP program, and then our other new construction programs, including the pilot program that we're going to talk about here. So in working with Ron on the workshop, what did we find out that builders wanted in order to do new construction? Well, cheap financing, buildable lots with infrastructure. But what are some challenges for Florida Housing in order to do that? We don't really have a dedicated funding source for that. As great as the Live Local Act, was in providing, funds for a myriad of different uses, home ownership, new construction was not one of them. So we've been working, with this pilot program. Also, the statute that actually governs, new construction for Florida Housing is the same HAP statute that governs the down payment assistance. It has a new construction side to it. However, that's a bit antiquated. So once we are able to report back to you guys the full, results of the pilot program, if this is something the board decides you want to move forward with, we will need to find a funding source and then find out if we're going to do it under the HAP statute, what tweaks we might need to do to that statute in order to make it function like the pilot program has done. So our home builder new construction pilot program was designed to help with the lack of new construction. There was a lack of units that we were getting, especially on the starter home level when we began talking about this 3 years ago. So it is a revolving construction loan at 0% interest. Successful applicants must build a minimum of 5 new homes on donated lots. Qualified home buyer must be at or below 120% of the area median income. And the sales price, equals the fully underwritten construction cost plus a max 16% developer fee. And there is a maximum on the one that we're working on right now of about $281,000 is the maximum purchase price. We do require accessibility and visitability features for the homes that are built. And out of the line of credit, up to 20% can be left in the deal as down payment assistance. So one successful applicant for this called Homes Bring Hope, and they're working in the Daytona Beach area. And you can see the lots and their relation to I-95 and the Speedway and the airport. So they are infill lots that were donated to the developer. She is beginning with 6 donated lots. We've closed on the revolving loan, and 3 of those lots are under construction. And we expect the first draws to be approved early next week. So again, the max sales price of the units is $281,000. So before I go into the HOP program, that's pretty much all I have to report back to you right now on the pilot program. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions that you have on that.
All right.
How many, developers do you have in this pilot program now?
So the board authorized us to fund up to 3 developers with lines of credit of $1 million each. There were 2 successful applicants that the board approved to go into credit underwriting. Only one has actually made it through, and it looks like the second one, since we're 2 years into, this process of underwriting is not going to successfully make it through the credit underwriting process. So we have probably this one developer to learn lessons from.
So so would you say it's a successful pilot program, or what would make this a successful pilot program?
Well, once we get these homes built and have the purchasers, purchase the homes and go through that entire process, I think we can come back to you with lessons learned as to, okay, why didn't we have more applicants? You know, what took so long in the credit underwriting process? And, you know, was there any difficulty in getting home buyers, which right now I don't think there will be, but those are all things we can report back to you on.
Thank you. I'm going to just ask one question, and then we'll sidebar on the 17,000 other questions that I might have. Is there a reason that Habitat affiliates from across the state weren't interested in participating in this pilot program?
That's a good question, because I don't think we received an application from any Habitat program. The HOP program that I was talking about is mostly used by Habitat affiliates.
So maybe offline we could talk about how this was marketed and whether or not there's an opportunity for developers to still come to the table. I could think of just a couple that might really.
Absolutely. And then we're speaking at on Monday afternoon. The Habitat affiliates are having a caucus at the Florida Housing Coalition meeting, and we've been invited to speak. And so that's one question I'll ask them, is about this pilot program. And
David, the difference is Habitat has a source of construction funding, okay? Other nonprofits do not.
Right.
Yes.
So that's the difference.
Yes, thank you, Ron.
I thought that might be the answer.
So the math on this going back, so it's 281,000 max sales price. Who donated the lots?
So these 6 lots were donated by a private entity to the developer. There are 4 more lots that the county is, or the city, can't remember, but a local government is looking to donate to this same developer. So again, with this $1 million revolving line, we say, go build as many, homes as you can for 3 years, and then we'll end the line there. Or if you have not, asked for a draw on the line of credit for 6 months, we're going to assume you're done and, in the line of credit at that point in time.
And I'm trying to reverse engineer the numbers. Like, I'm not sure how big this house is, but if we're 281K max sales price, inclusive of the 16% developer fee, you've got $242,000
Cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you got to cover with that loan.
Right. So, but you're 242, which would also include a builder fee for it. So sticks and bricks, we're at like 200K, I guess, depending on how big the house is. I'm trying to figure out, for 250 grand, can a house be built? I mean, because
If there's no dirt cost.
right, with free land.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at some of the other, the ones that we're financing like through sale, and those unit costs are up there as well, and that's for multifamily projects. So I'm trying to figure out maybe the reason this isn't working, because I wouldn't consider one qualified developer and $1 million line something that's really viable to go. Is there something in this equation that's wrong?
Good thought, Ryan. My thought or question is, have we calibrated our programs across the board, sync them up so that what we're willing to do and what our constraints are will work in a normal building, sticks and bricks sort of scenario, assuming we've got a donated lot? I would think every municipality that we as a group represent has orphaned lots that for some reason or another the city or the county has ended up with them. And they would love nothing better than to put them into the hands of a qualified nonprofit developer. But have we effectively communicated that to these municipalities? Or are we just, and I know we send out brochures, but we all get emails and we get brochures out the yin yang, and we can't study every one of them. Have we literally made an effort to say in 5 parts of the state, the Panhandle, Central Florida, Southwest Florida, Southeast Florida, said we're going to host a meeting for all of municipal housing unit people in the cities, and tell them, here's an example, here's what has to work, here's what you need to do to get ready. And if you can get these lots put together and get your thing done, we can, probably are going to have a program that's going to come in and help you do this.
Yeah,
But
I agree. I'm trying to figure is the next best step to talk with the builders, because there are a lot of like tear down houses that they would love to see a new house on, but is our equation wrong? Is that why this isn't working before we try and deploy something? Everyone might say the same thing, which is we can't do it for 250, your constraints.
Yeah, and the 281 would imply somewhere around a family income of $90,000 to $100,000. And does that calibrate with what the maximum sales price can be? Because you typically can leverage your family income 3 times, maybe 3 1/4, to be able to get a government program. And when you think about that, does all of that work for the sales price?
Can you just remind me where the 281 come from?
Good question.
So, you know, once they were accepted, they went to credit underwriting. And so Marinat underwrote this for us. So the builder actually put in, these are the models that I plan to build, and these are the costs associated with that.
So the 281 came from the builder?
So it's kind of
So
arbitrary.
it's not, it's arbitrary?
Well, except if it's 120 AMI, the actual equation is going to come from AMI at 1.2, and then the
Times-
affordability.
Well,
Within the
no,
count.
but if you have a program
Times
max,
3.
then, and your AMI is above that, it doesn't matter, you're capped out, which means by definition, the more expensive counties to build in, those subject to higher building code standards
Correct.
are not, it's never for that, so you're restricted to stick product with low labor costs.
So, you know, this all underwrote, you know, based on what the builder was able, you know.
But that's a
bring in
builder
the-
in a specific county.
That's,
Yeah,
builder
right.
specific
County.
and county specific, and also, we
Which is
did,
somewhat
yeah,
not
we,
abroad.
we did have an overall cap, you know, that we put on it based on the HUD limits, you know, for the home program, so that we could use that source of down payment assistance in case, you know, the amount that could be used in the, from the line of credit ran out.
Can the max price be calibrated somehow to the locale?
It is. Those HUD max limits are calibrated on a county-by-county
And then
basis.
can we adjust our program contributors to that?
Yes.
So I guess maybe it's just confused the way this is written. So the max sales price of the unit of 281 is not the entire pilot program, it's just
It's
this
just
one
Volusia
specific.
County.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you know, since
That's
there's
what-
only one successful applicant, and it's in Daytona Beach, this is all
Just that.
specific to this.
Okay, so is there a max then, or is it just limited based on AMI, statewide, in the overall, if there were an overall program?
Yeah, so if we were to do this as an overall program, it would be, you know, we could design it however we want to, and that's part of the lessons learned. But if we did it like this, it would be different for each county, because the HUD max sales price limits are different for
There
each
you
county.
Is the HUD max sales price calculated based on AMI as well, or is it a completely separate equation? Like, what's our ceiling in each county?
So it's factored in, yes.
Okay.
The max sales price is, you know, related
Part
to
of the
the
formula.
AMI.
Right.
Not factored in, but part of the formula.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know exactly, you know, what's behind their formula, but yes, it's certainly
The max
related to what
sales
people
price is
can.
part of the AMI, is driven by the AMI.
Yeah, they're probably backing in, right, based on
Leveraging income and, yes.
towards your,
Yes.
home costs.
And typically, that's at a 95%.
Yeah, so for example, Broward County is $372,000 max sales price, according to HUD. If we decided, you know, and yes, we did workshop this, as Ron mentioned, we not only workshopped it sort of with the board, but then we had a huge workshop that was very well attended, participated by local governments and builders, where we asked all of these questions. And
On-site workshop or?
yeah, it was available on-site, and it was also available for call-in remotely. same way we do it for our multifamily programs. And we took all of that input into coming up with this request for applications.
So Dave, you said in Daytona Beach, these lots were donated by individual person. Was this, and the developer was the one that gave you the floor plan of what they were going to build on that particular piece of property? Does it says how big those lots are? Could that have a factor as far as maybe the size of the lot and what they can build on that property?
I know that's in our credit underwriting report that came to you in May, I believe. But yes, they actually had 3 lots donated, and then they were able to go to the city and have those lots subdivided into 6. So, you know, the builder knew then, hey, I don't need all of this land, I can put 2 houses on it, and they went through the process of getting it subdivided and providing more houses with the same land.
So do you know
David,
what the
sorry.
did you know what the square footage, what was presented as far as the builder for that particular, those?
Yes.
Of the lots? No, I don't
Okay,
think we know.
but we do square footage of the homes.
The home.
Yeah,
square
so
footage.
4 homes are 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses at 1,477 square feet. 2 homes are 4 threes at 2,141 square feet.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So
Da-
if I may,
David?
to
Oh,
kind
I'm
of keep
sorry.
us on track a little bit, because we're already way behind schedule, and this is the discussion we wanted to have, but we do have some time built in at the end of the day for additional discussion, so we can come back to some of these. But we do have a presentation from the attorneys scheduled 20 minutes ago. So if y'all don't mind tabling for a little bit, and we can pick this up later this
Yeah,
afternoon.
I just wanted to
if that works for
mention,
everybody.
David, the hope was not only for the donated lots, but to have fees waived by the local, impact fees or building permit fees or whatever to keep the cost down.
You said those are waived?
The hope was for them to be waived or reduced, yes. So, okay, thank you very much. These are some of the things in your other slides, but yes, we can be happy to come back to those later today or just to have conversations at any time with any of you guys and go over this in more detail. So who gets the clicker? There we go.
All right, thanks. Yeah,
Thank you.
We'll
So as
come
they
back
get
to
set
that.
up, y'all can keep talking if you want, but they're coming up now.
No, it's fine. It's lawyer time.
Lawyer time.
So if it's all right with you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to go ahead and start while they get organized up here. And for the record, I'm Laura Cox, Managing Director of Asset Management and Guarantee Program, and today I'm presenting on behalf of the Office of General Counsel, my other role. So while they're getting organized, I wanted to just start by giving you an overview of some of the services our in-house legal team does. We handle regulatory compliance and rulemaking. This means we interpret laws, rules, and policies, manage administrative legal matters, and oversee the rulemaking process to ensure our programs stay within legal boundaries. Next, we also handle contract and procurement. We draft, review, and negotiate contracts and agreements. We also manage the procurement process, mainly Jenny, and making sure everything is done by the book and that Florida Housing's interests are protected. We also handle litigation management. This includes managing litigation and administrative proceedings involving Florida Housing, whether it's responding to legal challenges or handling disputes related to funding decisions. We're also responsible for managing the foreclosure complaints related to single-family down payment assistance loans and ensuring that any surplus funds that are owed to Florida Housing are dispersed properly. Another key area is pre-development loans, multifamily grants, and some demonstration pilot program loans. Our team manages the document preparation, loan closing process for these programs. We also cover public records and sunshine law compliance. We make sure Florida Housing follows Florida's public records laws and open meeting requirements, providing legal support for records requests and public accessibilities. And the last item I wanted to touch on is the support the general counsel position provides to business units, staff, and the board. We offer advice on governance, ethics, and procedural issues to help make informed decisions. So as you can see, our internal team covers a lot of ground, but when we need specialized expertise, we turn to some of our outstanding external partners, which you see here. And I'm excited to introduce Leslie Howe from QTAC, all the way over. I'll come over and bring this to you. Thank you. And she's going to kick off the presentation from our outside counsel, and they'll give you a closer look at the important work they do with us.
Thank you, Laura. So many lawyers makes me nervous.
But we're on your team.
You better cut the tension real quick with this room.
Makes me want to hire a lawyer.
Yeah, we're here to help you.
They even have those big books, like it's like an old movie.
Well, I think, obviously we're standing between you and lunch, so we'll just go down the line really quickly and do quick introductions and then get moving on our presentation. And, if we could hold questions until the end, I think that would help us move through it a little faster. So I'm Leslie Powell. I'm a partner at QTAC Rock, and we are one of your many bond counsels. Steve and I.
I'm her Tim Walls. So,
Steve and I specialize in the single-family area, and then our colleague Mike Casamillas, who couldn't be here, he had a conflicting meeting, is on your multifamily team.
Hi, I'm Carl McCarthy from Greenberg Traurig. I'm also one of the bond counsel team and the multifamily housing, and I'm based in Orlando.
Hi, I'm Michelle Fiani. I'm also one of the bond counsel. We're partnered with Greenberg Traurig. I'm based in Miami.
Hello, I'm Jason Breath, shareholder with Bryant Miller Olive. We serve as bond counsel and special and disclosure counsel for Florida Housing.
Hi, my name is Sandy McLennan. I'm a partner with Squire Patton Boggs, and with my co-counsel Steve Bullock, we serve as bond counsel.
Good morning. As Sandy noted, I'm Steve Bullock, Law Offices of Steve Bullock. We serve as co-counsel for Florida housing transactions.
Good morning, Junius Brown. I'm a partner with Neighbors Gibbelin and Nickerson. We serve as your special counsel and disclosure counsel.
And last but not least, I'm Jan Carpenter, also special and disclosure counsel. I'm a partner with Latham Luna in Orlando.
So I think, to give you the context in which we provide the services that we do, we thought it might be helpful to kind of outline an average deal and the role that we play as, Florida moves through, in this case, a single-family bond issuance. And so first, tomorrow on your agenda, you might have noticed there's an annual authorization for your single-family bond issuance. It'll cover several deals. And so leading up to tomorrow's meeting, we've been working with your staff in terms of getting that resolution drafted and talking to them about what your needs might be going forward given different market forces. And so that will all happen tomorrow for subsequent deals. But you're also currently doing a deal now. And so with your existing authorization, we've kicked off your current deal. And so behind the scenes, we've been working with your staff and with your financial advisor and with the lead underwriter to think about and structure that single family deal. What kinds of, programmatic things do you need to support? How much are you going to need to get the deal done and to do the programs that you need to do? What are the tax implications of the various structures that you're looking at? And so all of that kind of happens at the beginning of a deal as you kick it off. Then based on what that structure ends up being, we work closely with Jan and Junius, your special counsel, your disclosure counsel, to get the initial drafts of your bond docs done and the initial drafts of the offering documents done. And so that offering statement is going to be what your underwriters then use to market and sell your bonds. And so there's a lot of work together to make sure that it's accurately reflecting the deal structure and the tax implications to those investors. And then also making sure that you're compliant with SEC regulations. Then we go to the diligence period. So Monday, you guys will have a diligence call with your underwriters as you get ready to start marketing those bonds. And so, your staff looks over the diligence questions, runs things by us to make sure that they're answering things appropriately, sees kind of where we can kind of narrowly, tailor some of your disclosure obligations. Then in about a week, you will be out in the market pricing and selling your bonds. And, it's a really kind of condensed 1 or 2 day period where you have a ton of underwriters, investment bankers out there selling your bond product. And behind the scenes, we're working with Underwriters Council to make sure that the document that you sign in connection with pricing, which is your BPA, your bond purchase agreement, accurately reflects the pricing results that you've gotten in the market, accurately, represents, the certifications as to, what you're going to provide in connection with issuing the bonds, and just kind of making sure everything works together and that the structure is accurately reflected in that document, because that's something that you sign right at pricing. And then once we've priced the deal, we move into sort of the closing phase. So there's a flurry of activity. It's usually, anywhere from, we've gone as short as 1 week between pricing and closing, but usually there's a little bit more time. In this coming deal, there will be a few weeks. So we prepare all the closing documents. We finalize the bond documents with the pricing results. We prepare all of the various certificates that your partners, e-housing or, your Lakeview, your servicer, some of the other, professionals that are involved have to sign in connection with issuing your bonds. And then we, prepare the certificates that you sign in connection with the issuance of the bonds, and we prepare the bonds themselves to be delivered to the trustee. In connection with all of that, we're also doing tax diligence because a large component of your single-family bond deals are going to be tax-exempt bonds, and so there's a deep dive that's done with our tax group and with us, making sure that all of the numbers that are being run and in connection with the pricing of the bonds are tax compliant. And then we review everything, collect everything, assemble everything, share it with all the other members of the working group, and close the deal. But our work doesn't stop there. We have a post-issuance compliance obligation that we help you all provide, which is just making sure that, again, everything that needs to be done to keep the deal in compliance for tax purposes is done. And so we work with your FA, with your staff, with the underwriter of prior deals to make sure that as things change, your deal is fluid and you're able to change with it to keep it in compliance. So that's kind of the really 50,000-foot level of a single-family bond deal. And then also behind the scenes, Steve in particular is providing, programmatic and technical support. So I don't.
Yeah, no, just real briefly, what Leslie just described is the life cycle of a deal. In addition, I see David came back. I thought he wanted to avoid me because we're in regular communication with David and his staff, both with regards to kind of annual things like when purchase prices change and income limits, anything that's tax related, we work with him on that. But then, there are always programmatic questions. Is this borrower eligible? Is this house eligible? And so we're in constant communication with your staff to answer those questions. So, and always happy to do so.
And so I think now the multifamily folks are going to do a similar kind of life cycle of a deal, and then we can, again, I know I flew through that, so questions at the end, happy to take them.
All right, so I'm going to go through the life cycle of a multifamily transaction. I'm going to kind of be the narrator of this slide, but if other folks on the multifamily bond counsel side want to jump in and sort of fill in any of the things I leave out, please feel free. So one of the first steps that the board does is approve what we call an acknowledgement resolution. And the real important aspect of that resolution from a developer borrower standpoint is it declares the official intent for tax purposes, which sets the date at which they can reimburse themselves with bond proceeds for capital expenditures they make. And it sort of just is an indication that this deal is a real deal and is moving forward through the multifamily process. After that, the credit underwriters begin preparing the credit underwriting report, and once the credit underwriting report is finalized, that's when Florida Housing assigns counsel to the deal. Bond counsel is usually first because we have to prepare the authorization and sale resolution, but special counsel and disclosure counsel are also assigned as well. Bond counsel then will prepare that authorization and sale resolution. Those documents are approved by the board. It establishes the not-to-exceed principal amount of the bonds. It authorizes the preparation of all the documents. It sets the terms of those bonds to be in compliance with the credit underwriting report. And the credit underwriting report is approved by the board as well. At that point, we have a fully authorized multifamily bond transaction, and deal calls are then scheduled. We typically have weekly calls with everybody in the working group once the deal gets going. I mean, you're talking 50 people on a conference call once a week, setting forth all of the requirements that are needed, where people are in preparation of the documents, where they are in due diligence, just to make sure everyone is on the same page throughout the entire deal. After we schedule that first call, special counsel will prepare the Florida Housing loan commitment. I don't know if Junius or Jan want to jump in at this point to sort of give some details on that.
Sure. As special counsel, this is sort of the beginning of the role for us. We do our due diligence list that are the various documents we need to support the real estate loan, but the loan commitment is the gateway for the Florida Housing Council to start working on a deal. So we take the underwriting report and all the requirements of the loan. We also list all the other lenders because all those other loans have to close at the same time in order for our bond loan to close. We include the tax equity partner, so we know that they have to close on their LPA as well. And we pretty much lay out all the conditions to close as well as compliance with the underwriting report. So once that gets finalized by Florida Housing, goes to the borrower, and once it's executed, then the bond documents can flow, and then we would start working on the real estate documents. So that's kind of our preliminary introduction. It also gets the loan deal finalized, the commitment signed, and then bond counsel gets working on their documents.
Yeah, so speaking of documents, there are a ton of documents that get prepared in a multifamily bond transaction. I listed just a handful of them. These are mainly the ones that Florida Housing executes. There are many, many other documents prepared by Lenders Council and Tax Credit Investor Council. But your main bond documents, depending on the structure, if it's a bond, you're going to have an indenture and a loan agreement. If it's a note, you're going to have a funding loan agreement or project loan agreement. And these documents just lay out all the details of the bonds, the payment dates, the amounts, the interest rates, all the covenants that go into the bond transaction. The next set of documents are again, they're special counsel type documents that are prepared by your special counsel. And that includes your mortgage, your promissory note, the very important land use restriction agreement that sets forth all the restrictions to make it a tax-exempt bond. You have the guarantees, mortgage servicing agreement, compliance monitoring agreement. I don't know, Jan, if you guys want to wait for your slides to describe all those. And then you have your disclosure counsel documents. It is a publicly offered transaction, which means an underwriter purchases those bonds and sells them to the public. You'll have a preliminary and final official statement that gets posted to the investors, tells them everything they need to know about the transaction. In a multifamily context, most of the important information for investors relates to the borrower and the project, and that information isn't provided by Florida Housing, it's provided by the borrower. So there's actually very little information in the POS and OS that Florida Housing is responsible for. There's a continuing disclosure agreement and a bond purchase agreement as well. The tax documents are next, and every firm sort of does them slightly differently. My firm, we have 3 sets of documents. We have an arbitrage rebate agreement, a non-arbitrage certificate, and a proceeds certificate. And those set forth how the proceeds are being spent. It has all of the certifications and representations from everybody to satisfy the many, many tax requirements there are. in order to make sure that the bonds remain tax exempt. You have the IRS Form 8038, which is always a good form to slide in front of someone to sign because it's a very official-looking tax form, and folks tend to get nervous when they sign it. But it just lets the IRS know that Florida Housing has issued these tax-exempt bonds and some of the details that are set forth there. And one thing that we do in connection with this is a tax diligence. We're in contact with the borrower and other folks to make sure that they are in fact going to actually do all of these things and that they understand all of their requirements. And one of the things we do is we examine the source by use. There are many things that can trip up your tax exemption, and sometimes they're kind of nuanced. So we're highly involved in making sure that everyone understands what they're signing and what they're representing to, and that those are in fact true and correct. Closing documents and opinions, many closing documents get prepared, just confirming all the representations and warranties, and then we issue, as bond counsel, a tax-exempt opinion that says, hey, based on everything here, these bonds are excludable from gross income, assuming everyone continues to comply with all the requirements. Sort of going on at the same time as all the document preparation is the fiscal sufficiency determination and the TEFRA hearing and approval. And a lot of this is done in-house at Florida Housing. We're sort of, as bond counsel, involved in making sure it's getting done and reviewing things, but Florida Housing staff handles this for the most part. The fiscal sufficiency is unique to Florida Housing. Local housing finance authorities do not have this requirement. It's a constitutional requirement that says when the state issues affordable housing bonds, a state fiscal agency has to make a determination that in every state fiscal year there are enough revenues to support the debt that is issued. So a fiscal sufficiency report is prepared that makes that demonstration that shows, hey, based on the projections, based on the debt service we're looking at, there's more than 1 times debt service coverage essentially. And prior to a statutory change that happened a few years ago, that fiscal agency was the SBA, and then the legislature changed that to make Florida Housing its own fiscal agency. So Florida Housing has a group that meets and signs off on the fiscal sufficiency determination. TEFRA hearing and approval, it's a tax requirement. The TEFRA notice has to be published 7 days prior to the hearing. It's published on Florida Housing's website pursuant to the tax code regulations, and it's also published in the Florida Administrative Weekly. And then Florida Housing will hold the hearing at their offices where anyone can provide written comments to them or show up and discuss the project, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. Very rarely do people show up at these hearings. And then once that's done, Florida Housing submits that report to the Division of Bond Finance. As a state agency, the governor is actually responsible for approving the TEFRA process, and it goes to the Division of Bond Finance. They review everything, and then we get a letter from the state signed by the governor or his designee, basically approving that this tax process has been satisfied. Another slightly unique Florida Housing thing that I think other HFAs are starting to like and implement is the so-called real estate closing. It's a bit of a misnomer. It's just sort of a dry closing that Florida Housing requires 7 days prior to the bond closing, where basically we say, all right, we're not going to move forward with the bond closing until everyone can get together and say there are no major issues that are going to derail this deal at this point. So you like to have your bonds rate locked. You like to have all approvals, tax credit investment approval, lender approval, every credit approval you can possibly have So that basically anything that has to be done between the real estate closing and the bond closing is just administrative, just making sure you have all your signature pages, making sure everything's good to go. What you don't want to happen is the day before bond closing, the tax credit investor go, oh, it turns out we don't have formal approval yet. We're not going to have it. We're not going to have it till after. And sometimes without that real estate closing deadline in there, that can't actually happen. Sometimes folks are pretty silent on those weekly conference calls because they don't want to be the bad guy. After that, you had the bond pre-closing. Pre-COVID, we all used to travel to Florida Housing's offices, and we'd all meet in a room, and the entire working group would be there, and we'd sign documents and eat lunch and make sure everything was good to go. During COVID and post-COVID, everything has moved to a mail-away closing. I personally like the mail-away closing. I know others may not. I'm pretty sure the developers like the mail-away closing because they don't have to fly to Tallahassee. But it's basically now the pre-closing is everyone just gets on a call and confirms they have everything they need for the closing. Usually happens a day or two before the actual bond closing. Everyone says we have all of our signature pages, we have all of our due diligence done, everything's completed. We're ready to go, but for the money being wired to the parties. And that's when the bond closing happens. Money gets wired to the trustee, confirms they have everything. Everyone confirms that they're done. There's nothing outstanding. We're ready to go. And at that point, we declare the deal closed, and that's that. You just close the multifamily deal. And that is as high level as you could possibly get for a multifamily bond transaction. If you want to go to the next slide.
Anyone else want to add anything before we?
Don't never pass up an opportunity. So you mentioned the lunches. I think that's what people miss the most about closing in Tallahassee, because it was always it was a little bit of a contest among the bond council as to who could order the best lunch. So we don't have that anymore. What I wanted to take the opportunity to say is that as bond council, we do have a specific role, but our primary goal, quite honestly, is to coordinate with special counsel to make sure that the tax rules are complied with, Florida housing rules are complied with, and all of the multiple sources of financing meld together. So I can't think of a deal that I've done where there wasn't a secondary loan source, whether it was, through Florida Housing or elsewhere, or, local government support. So we have to coordinate and sort of meld all those financing sources together and make sure that at the end of the day, we've allocated the right costs to the bond side and other costs to other sources. So when Jason was talking about diligence and that use by source, we have a whole spreadsheet. It has all of the sources of financing across one side, and then we've got what piece of the development budget is coming from bond proceeds or loan proceeds, and what's coming from the other sources. And that quite honestly takes a lot of time, and it goes through a lot of different remunerations as those development budgets change a little bit. But that, I really think we are a little bit, we're sort of like the captain of the ship in a way, because when it comes down to it, when the deal closes, it's because we say we're closed, which is actually one of the nicest emails you can send out on a deal. Anybody else want to?
Yeah, hey, just really quickly. So I've seen that look before, that glazed look. So just really quickly, talking about the real estate closing, just going back on that a little bit. So in addition to all the things that Jason said, one of the things that's really important also is making sure that before we get to the closing table, all of the real estate related issues have been, buttoned up. Everybody signed off on those. Either the developer has its permits or a permit ready letter from the entity, the governmental entity, basically saying that they'll issue permits subject only to the payment of fees. We also want to know that the borrower has authorization to enter into the document, into the transaction, and to execute and deliver the bond documents to which they are party, so.
And of course, I'll jump into the real estate closing, which isn't really a closing, but is our artificial closing. I just want to give Florida Housing credit because this is really the first entity around the state, and I think of many states that did this. And of key importance is this all has to happen before any offering document is put out in public. So this way, Florida Housing will never have a failed bond sale based on a real estate issue. I mean, the worst thing to do is to have an offering document out there, get ready to sell bonds, and find out you can't get permits, there's a survey problem, there's an issue in the bond documents. So the timing of that is critical, and it's something Florida Housing has been really good, and we abide to in all the bond deals.
And just with respect to the documents that you see listed here, if you ever wanted to just get a general summary of the transaction, the document that you would look to would be that offering document that Jan just mentioned, the preliminary official statement and the final official statement for a public offering. And if it's a private transaction where the bonds are going to be privately placed, they're not going to be sold to the public. Florida Housing requires what's called a transaction summary to be prepared for each transaction. So the general overview of the transaction itself will be either, if it's a public offering, in that official statement, or if it's a private placement, in that transaction summary. And then from there, you can go to the specific documents that will give you all the details. But if you wanted just a general summary of any transaction, you would go to one of those two disclosure documents.
If you want to go to the next slide, I can talk about bond allocation. So this is a hot topic issue, mainly because the state decided to change the statute this past legislative session. I think the statute's been in effect for quite some time, probably since the 80s or 90s, and they've sort of 80s, and they've redone the entire process. So the good news is they sort of left Florida Housing's process alone. They sort of changed a few of the deadline dates, but for the most part, the way Florida Housing gets allocation is going to remain the same. And you can't issue a multifamily housing deal without private activity bond allocation. So it's very important that Florida Housing have this allocation in order for it to issue these multifamily bonds. And the way allocation works is it's pretty much $100 per capita for each calendar year. Allocation in the state of Florida is controlled and administered by the Division of Bond Finance. Just to give you an idea of the state allocation for 2024, it was $2.8 billion for the entire state, of which Florida Housing got $682 million. The way that works is at the beginning of the year, the division calculates what the private activity bond allocation is going to be, and Florida Housing gets 25% of that. They just stick 25% into the Florida Housing allocation pool. And when I say stick, it's not real dollars, so don't think Florida Housing sticks. Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's just a number that we use. So these are all the new statute dates, by the way. So before October 1st, Florida Housing can issue bonds from the Florida Housing pool without requesting allocation, without asking permission from the Division of Bond Finance. It's Florida Housing's allocation to use. After that, though, you have to tell the division how you're going to use that allocation for the remainder of the year. So prior to September 30th, Florida Housing has to submit a form to the Division of Bond Finance that says, hey, here's what we're planning on doing. What we've been doing in years past and what we're probably going to continue doing is basically say, hey, we're going to reserve all of this allocation for single-family projects, in large part because we have a TEFRA approval for that large amount of money for single-family bonds going forward. So it's pretty simple just to reserve all of that allocation for Florida Housing going forward with a single-family request. And then prior to November 30th, Florida Housing has to submit a carry-forward request to the division. And basically, under the IRS code, you are allowed to carry forward unused allocation and use it for 3 years into the future. So another fun thing the IRS code lets you do is it lets you decide by filing an IRS Form 8328 how you're going to use that allocation between multifamily and single family. So what Florida Housing does is we request the single family allocation request around September 30th. It gets approved. That means Florida Housing keeps the $682 million, because if it did not, it would get swept into other pools and then could be used for other purposes. And then we file a carry forward request with the state. That gets granted, and then prior to February 15th of the following year, we work with Florida Housing staff to determine how that $682 million gets divvied up between multifamily and single family and gets carried forward and can be used for the next 3 years. And we've gotten very efficient at this process, and we are still, we basically only issue using carry forward because we're able to do so. And you do have to use carry forward first. So before you can use any of the current year $682 million sitting in the Florida Housing pool, you have to exhaust all of your carry forward. So I think right now we still have some 2021 carry forward left. So this is the last year you can use that. And then we have 2022 carry forward, and then we will, in 2023, and then we will have 2024 carry forward as well. And although it's not on the slide, one thing I'll mention is Florida Housing, the reason we have so much carry forward, and it hasn't quite been like this in recent years, is Florida Housing is sort of the default entity that gets all of the excess at the end of the year. So there were years where Florida, the state would have a lot of excess private activity bond allocation, and Florida Housing would have carry forward amounts, you know, $700, $800, $900 million worth of allocation. Allocation has become a more scarce resource and is going to be scarce for the foreseeable future. So odds are we won't get that nice $200 million extra allocation that we got, you know, in 2018 and 2019. And instead, we'll probably just have to be within our means of the $682 million, but obviously that number goes up every year as population increases. So that's bond allocation in a nutshell. And I think I'm finally done talking.
Well, and just one more point for the board to understand. While that legislation was making its way through, you know, its process, I want to say Angie and Marissa did a wonderful job of advocating and educating legislatures and the governor's office in terms of the programs that you provide and the need that you all have to maintain the cap that you were allocated. So I think the fact that it wasn't touched was due in large part to a lot of the advocacy and education that they did as it was working its way through the process. Okay, Jan Junius.
Sure, I think we have 2 minutes, so we'll talk very, very quickly and kind of give a quick overview. Again, Jan Carpenter and Junius Brown were two of the special counsel firms. Just kind of as background, we're both government lawyers, represent issuers of debt, so that's our background. And when we get assigned by Florida Housing, it's either disclosure, as you've heard about, or special counsel. And special, it sounds nice, but it's kind of a real estate counsel role in that we close the loans for, you know, sale, viability, ELI, the RRLP, the demonstration pilot programs. As special programs come up, we put the documents together. And interesting in doing that, I mean, unlike a bank loan, yes, you've got your mortgage and note, you're promised to pay back the money, but we also have the affordability restrictions, and we have Chapter 420, we have the Florida regulations or rules, as we call them, in Chapter 67, and we have the RFAs. So there's a lot that has to go into the different documents for the different programs. And then beside that, occasionally we'll help if Laura in the legal department has questions for sunshine law or any of the other various things that come up in governments, will assist if needed.
Yeah, so really quickly, you've heard both Leslie, Jason, I think Steve also talk about disclosure counsel. So we also serve as disclosure counsel on both single family and multifamily transactions. Our main role there is just accurately preparing a preliminary official statement or an official statement to accurately reflect the transaction. We're making sure that what's in all of those documents that bond counsel drafts, and even some of the documents on the real estate side that we draft, making sure that the POS and the OS accurately reflect that. And the main thing that we're doing in that is, trying to tell bondholders what the security for the repayment of the bonds are.
Next slide. Next slide.
Yeah, next slide. Okay, so again, as special counsel, we're reviewing the loan structure and the final credit underwriting report that's approved by you as the board. We are looking at the title work to determine what documents we need. Another thing that drives the documents that we use on a given transaction are the parties in the transaction and the loan structure. Depending, different lenders have different document requirements that, kind of document their programs. And so we take that into account also. We're also looking at the various guarantors and preparation of our guarantees. I think Steve and Jason and Leslie also talked about this. We also do group calls, working group calls with, all the various parties, lenders. If it's a local HFA, they're involved, the developer, bond counsel, credit underwriter, the whole team. We typically prepare a document checklist in the beginning, just so everybody knows the documents that we're going to use on a given transaction. On one transaction, this is a 3-page document here just for one loan. And so, on a given transaction, like Sandy said before, on a bond transaction, I don't know when the last time I've seen a bond transaction with just bonds, or bonds and credits. It's usually got, sale, ELI, some other type of subordinate Florida housing debt. And then we'll also see transactions that have local funds in them, from municipalities and counties also.
And then once we figure out the documents, then we do our due diligence list. And our due diligence is different from the bond and tax due diligence. This is the real estate similar to a bank loan, and it covers the typical things you'd expect: title survey, environmental, at least a phase 1, maybe phase 2, and those have to comply with the requirements to protect Florida housing from lender liability under the various environmental laws. On the affordability side, we look for management agreements that make sure it all matches the credit underwriting. We have the corporate documents, incumbency certificates, UCC searches, and then we have the actual building issues, the permits or permit letter, the availability of utilities, concurrency. So that's about a 15-page list that we send out. It varies depending on the deal and the structure. It has all the other lenders. As we say, we may have 5 or 6 lenders in a deal. So all their various loan documents and any particular issues we have with them. And of importance, the limited partnership agreement for tax credits. That's sort of a key document. It's 100 and some pages of tax issues of how the actual partnership and the tax credit equity folks all work together. But we look for that. A key point is we have an operating deficit reserve, which is really key because basically to pay operating deficits, if this thing can't get up and running and there isn't enough money, Florida Housing needs to make sure there's some place that money is going to come from. So Florida Housing has a requirement, and usually it's tied in to the LPA. So that's one of the key things we look at. Once we get our diligence flowing in, we've looked at title, we've got the basic corporate type entity stuff, we prepare the loan documents, which are a lot. Junius will show you, we have our books here to kind of show you what the documents look like at one point in the past. We review the documents of all the lenders. Those 5 other lenders have their sets of loan documents, and we have to make sure there's nothing in there that doesn't work with our deal and nothing in our deal that's going to conflict with theirs. Subordination agreements, of course, are very important. We prepare them if there's a loan that's junior to our loan. If there's somebody senior to our loan, we have to make sure that we include all the particular things that Florida Housing is very careful of, and we have to make sure that none of our rules get violated. For example, a first loan, typically subordination says, well, we can add more money to this if we need to, and we say, no, you can't do that. You know, we have state regulations that prohibit it. We work with Fannie and Freddie and HUD. I mean, HUD, I see Marissa laughing. It took us almost 3 years to negotiate a subordination agreement that was acceptable to Florida Housing and met the Florida housing law. So those are the kind of things that we look at. Once the documents are out, we get comments from all those various parties to our documents, and we have to accept what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and then talk with Florida Housing and make sure that all the business terms are in there, make sure there's no other issues related to the documents. And then hopefully we get to the point where we're ready to close.
Jan?
Yes.
Sorry to stop you.
Sure. Nope.
But on the LPA, who's drafting the LPA?
The tax credit equity law firm.
Okay.
Yes, so usually on the calls, we have the equity business folks, we sometimes have the underwriter, and then they have separate counsel that prepares that.
Right,
And
and
it's
then
highly-
you're
yeah.
reviewing it.
Yes, we review it and give input on the things that we care about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, one of the conditions for that real estate closing, which happens at least a week before the bond closing, is that your special counsel has signed off on that limited partnership agreement. So they've reviewed it and they're comfortable with everything that's in there. And, you know, the agreement is meeting all the Florida Housing's conditions. That's something that has, one of the long list of things that are required to be final before we can say we're going to proceed to the bond closing, is a sign off on that real estate, of that limited partnership agreement.
Thanks, Steve. So now, we're hopefully closing the transaction. We will only close if, you know, all parties have signed off on the final forms of the docs, and all the subordination agreements that Jan mentioned are executed. All the due diligence is received and approved. All the funds necessary to close, and all closing deliverables have been received. So for closing deliverables, we're talking about executed copies of loan documents and closing documents, resolutions, opinions,
Title policy.
And so, yeah, those are some of the closing deliverables there. The credit underwriter has to sign off that all the conditions set forth in your final credit underwriting report that the board has approved have been satisfied, and all the numbers on the settlement statement and closing statements match Florida Housing rules and guidelines. And then Florida Housing also checks to make sure that there are no past due amounts or non-compliance for the developer and all of its related parties. And at that point, we're ready to close the transaction. And so we close transaction, go through the draw process, money's issued. And so then about, I don't know, 6 weeks later, you get this. So this is, this basically is a bond book. It has all of the final documents fully executed. Some of this is a one volume. This is, actually, this is volume 3. Volume 3. So over time, these have gotten much, much smaller. And so now, instead of having these, we went from these in 2015 to CDs. Yes.
What do you do with that?
You guys know what this is?
Where does that go?
Where does that go? So this was 2017, okay?
Wow.
So 2 years later, and now we have gone to thumb drives, and so we've gone from this size thumb drive to the smallest thumb drive that you can have. So So yeah, getting sleek here, so.
So that's pretty much how we close the loans, skipping a lot of parts. But as you can see, there's lots of parties involved, and the process is anywhere from a great loan closes in probably 2 months to a year-long process to get everybody on board along with their closing.
Before we finish, sorry, could I just make one high-level point? It occurred to me as I'm listening and covering all this, there's sort of a punchline item that might have been missed. I thought of it when we talked about the tax credit investor and the limited partnership agreement. The whole reason we're going through this rigmarole of issuing tax-exempt bonds, which has a lot of complexity, is to provide 4% low-income housing tax credits. So just keeping that all tied together, just thought I'd make that point.
Thanks. Anyone have any
Mr. Chair,
questions?
before we do questions,
Yeah, please.
just if I could give one, just bringing it back around. The intent of us in providing this was not to overwhelm you, right? There's not going to be a test on every little document that has to happen, but it is to give you an understanding of how much diligence and the really seasoned subject matter expert professionals that are behind all of our transactions, working on behalf of the corporation, protecting the corporation's interests to make sure the deals are successful. And so it's, so I just wanted to provide that context. And every time, like Angie said, we appreciate the compliments to the staff, but our professionals are part of our team as well, and we couldn't do it without the good work of our professionals. So hopefully this bit of education, like I said, no tests, but we really do appreciate these folks working on our behalf. Thank you.
Sandra.
I'm not smart enough to ask any questions, but I did want to thank all of our outside counsel, but sorry, Marissa, I also want to make sure to acknowledge Laura Cox that has so many hats these days that I don't even know, and Ethan Katz in the back that didn't even get to come up with all of the fancy attorneys. So thank you both to in-house and outside counsel for doing all of the things that made my eyes sort of gloss over every couple words. I was like, oh, I know what that means. Good.
Thank you. Ron.
Yeah, my question is kind of a procedure. Do we price the bonds and then sell them and then do an offering? And how does that, I'm trying to figure out how that all works. What's first? I'm sure you got to price them first before you can sell them.
Well, so pricing is part of selling. So in the public context, you would have a public offering. You would go to your lead underwriters and your underwriting team, and you would deliver a preliminary offering statement, a POS. And that kind of outlines the structure of the deal, what you're selling, how the bonds are going to be repaid, who you are as an agency. And this is true for single family and multifamily, this process, in the public context.
Okay, and then do we do the offering?
And so that's right. And so that's your marketing period, and it generally happens about a week before you price and sell. Price and sell is where the underwriters, the investment bankers, are calling around and asking who wants to buy these bonds and how much are you willing to pay. And so those negotiations are happening, and the pricing is happening in the context of what's happening in the market on any given day and what rates are doing. And so that is all happening at the underwriter, investment banker level in conjunction with discussions with your finance team, and what they're willing to accept, what terms they're willing to accept. And so you price and sell is happening at the same time because you negotiate what the price is in order to sell and have someone else buy. So that's all happening at the same time. And it's usually price and sell is either a day or two. It doesn't last more than 2 days.
Years ago, I did a community development district bond loan, and we had several attorneys representing the purchaser of the bonds. So I'm assuming at this point, the state guarantees the issuer is the purchasers actually reviewing the documents before closing.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand.
Okay.
I know you said
When I did a community
CDB.
development district loan.
Right.
Okay, the purchaser of the bonds had representation at the closing. Okay, I'm wondering if the state guarantees those bonds or that's not necessary.
Oh, I'm not sure about that. You mean, like, is the state guaranteeing the bond debt?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if
No,
anyone here.
no,
knows.
no, no,
Yeah,
no, no.
there's-
Every document, particularly on a multifamily side, is very clear that, you know, Florida Housing is a conduit issuer. They are issuing the tax exempt debt and loaning the proceeds to the borrower, and it is the borrower that is responsible for making the loan payments to the trustee so that Florida Housing can make those payments. And in the event of a shortfall or anything, any default, the investors look to the borrower, not Florida Housing.
And so what so that would be, if the state is guaranteeing it, that would be an example of like a GO, a general obligation. The debt that Florida Housing issues is revenue bonds, not GO.
Right.
So like in the single family context, your investors are looking through, you know, the assets of Florida Housing and into your broader indenture and what the assets are of that indenture, which in your case it's a lot of MBS. In the multifamily context, like Jason just said, they're looking through to the borrower and what the revenues of that project are going to be as rent payments come back in. So the GO concept is not one that Florida Housing uses.
Right, the state is not guaranteeing any of our bonds.
Great, thank you.
Jody?
So, Jan, I'm doing the math up here, and I see 9 attorneys. Is it likely that all nine of you all are involved in one transaction?
No, Florida Housing would assign one firm as bond counsel and one firm as special and disclosure.
Yeah,
And that's
okay.
rotated, yes.
Okay, all right, so the math was scaring me.
Yes, so you were,
How could we ever get one close?
yeah.
And when would it be feasible? Secondly, just for modeling purposes, do we do it as a percentage of the loan amount, your fees, or do we do it by an hourly amount?
Our fees are set by contract with Florida Housing, so they're a set rate for each type of loan.
And is that by hourly, or is that by a percentage of the size?
It's a fixed fee based on the principal amount of the bond.
Okay, so it's
So
a
the
percent
larger the bond deal, the larger our fees.
And typically, it's going to have more complexion and more exposure.
Correct. Well,
And
you
then-
definitely, on a larger deal, our tax exempt opinion, obviously, you're more
You betcha.
exposed.
And then my final question is, I assume we all have really good E&O insurance here, right? It's all there, and we're reviewing it annually.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, we'll take a break for lunch and resume here in 42 minutes at 1 o'clock. Thank you.